Welcome back to Sepia Cinema. My name is Roy Boyd, your host, and with us today, we have a treat in the studio today. We have our veteran musicologist, Roger York. Roger York is a musicologist and also a film historian, and he's going to help us with our discussion and commentary of today's films. Thank you very much for being here with us, Roger.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. We have 3 films tonight. That's right, you heard me, 3, and the reason why it's 3 is because they're short. They're, about 10-minute shorts, the 3 films, and of course our theme is jazz. We're going to have 2 films from Duke Ellington and 1 from Louis Armstrong. So we're going to get directly to it because time is of the essence. Afterwards, towards, the end of the program, we will have the time for you to call in, share your comments, thoughts, about the films, and we will also discuss the background behind the films as well as we usually do on Sepia Cinema. We're going to get directly to it. Our first film goes back to 1935. It is a Paramount Pictures production. It is the Duke, Edward Kennedy Ellington. Duke Ellington in Symphony in Black.
tale on land or sea was when my man walked out on me. My man's gone, I feel forlorn. I've got those lost my man blues. He didn't treat me fair, it's more than I can bear. I've got those lost my man blues. I've got those lost my man, can't get him back again.
film.
Okay. And we are back. That was Symphony in Black, Duke Ellington. and that was 1935. Coming up, our next one will be Black and Tan. Black and Tan is possibly, Roger, possibly the very first motion picture with sound featuring an African-American musician. Is that right?
As far as I've been able to determine, I think that's probably the case.
Right. So here we go with Black and Tan. This is from RKO Radio.
Okay, well, let's try from the first. All right, now the first chorus will be cornet and trombone, see? Come on.
This here is the place, but wonder which one of these here numbers is it here?
Ain't it on the paper there?
Sure.
Well, read it then.
This here number's gonna give me a whole lot of trouble.
Well, we better hurry and get that piano out of here. But the boss said for us to be back at the store at 4 o'clock.
What time is it now, actually?
Let's see. There it is.
Sure is.
Yes. I told you the number, Sam.
Oh, you ain't told me that. Ain't no sevens made like that, man.
I know this was the place all the time.
Hush. How you talking about a place or somewhere?
Hey, what are you fellas doing coming in here like this?
Brother, remove your anatomy from that mahogany. We come here to move it today.
Well, you're not going to take my piano, are you?
I ain't gonna take your icebox. Why, you ain't paid nothing on it since last October. Esper?
Yeah?
Do your duty.
What you gonna do?
Well, I got 2 pieces and you ain't got but 1.
Dude, I've got some wonderful news. I've just landed a job in a nightclub, and I'm going to dance, and you're going to play. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Say, what are you boys doing here?
We moving the piano.
Oh, you can't take off piano.
We done taken it. Come on,
Oh,
Sarsaparilla.
say, wait a minute. Here's $10. $5 a piece. How's that?
No, ma'am, lady. We don't do business that way. Come on, Eczema.
Oh, wait a minute.
Come on, Zema. Oh, well, now listen, lady. If you want your piano to stay here for a few more days, I guess we can let it stay.
What's that?
Yes, ma'am. Esper?
Yeah?
Put that piano stool back where it belongs at. Take that dust and put it over there. You want a little taste of this, Jane?
I'll do that.
All right, ain't it?
All right.
Yeah. There. Pick up that rope there. Come on out here, and remember when we get to the store, these folks wasn't home.
I remember.
All right.
Oh, say, what are you going to do with that? What?
I clever forgot I had your gin in my hand.
Oh, that's all right. Keep it. Give me my glass.
Thank you, miss. Thank you.
Listen, don't forget, there was no one at home.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Gee, I'm glad that's over with.
But you know, honey, we can't take that job.
Why can't we?
Well, you know what the doctor said about your heart. You can't dance.
Oh, don't bother about my heart. What's that? Something you're writing?
That's the new number I'm writing. That's
Oh,
the
play it for me?
Sure. Art, come on, let's run this over for Freddie.
for you. You all know our star's been sick for quite some time. Well, she's better now, and I'm going to have her come out here and do a little dance for you. The inimitable Freddie Washington. Let's go, Duke. Play the girls' number. Get the show on. Keep the show on. Close that curtain.
The black and tan powder.
Black. That was Black and Tan, 1929. Duke Ellington there, an RKO radio picture. And, you know, we're having a lot of great music. You enjoying yourself?
Of course.
This is right up your
That's why I'm
forte.
here.
Well, Roger has a lot of anecdotes to share, a lot of background and history. He is the Duke Ellington expert and Louis Armstrong expert who, you know, I've ever came in contact with. His stories are staggering. We're going to talk more at length right after this one. We are now going to 1932. This is a Rhapsody in Black and Blue, of course, starring Satchmo, right here on Sepia Cinema.
That's one of them Louis Armstrong.
I don't care nothing for no Louis Armstrong.
Doggone cat, that boy go to town, isn't it?
I'm away from that grown box.
Well, can I help it because I got an ear for music?
Yeah, that all there is for is a ear for music and a mouth for pork chop. You better get a desire for work. Don't think you want to gigolo me, big boy.
Who's gigoloing what? You ain't paid me for my last romancing yet. Doggone it, that boy hot. Look at him
Now,
going to
you
stop.
looking for hot stuff, I'll give it to you.
Goodness alive, people can't have a little bit of fun sometime.
That's
I'm
your good for nothing, low down, lazy trick or inconvenience.
mopping all the time, mopping the old floor, pushing a mop. Go ahead, mop. Don't worry about me. I'll be there when you get down.
Yes, you be doing. Wasn't that for you die?
Say, honey, can I hear the other side of that record? His name is I'll Be Glad When You Dead, You Rascal You.
You be glad when who's what?
No, that's the name of the record.
You just shake that education out your head and get a move on.
These mail order wives don't work out. Boy, you ain't no good at all. I tell you, you ain't running my Yeah, you ain't no good at all, boy. Captain grinning in my face, trying to bite me in the back of my wife, you old dog. Look at here. I want that to tell you. Right here. Now, I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I brought you into my home. You wouldn't leave my wife alone. I'll be glad when you're dead, you. I will be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I'll be tickled to death when you leave this earth, you dog. I took you for my friend. The way you bit me in the back was a sin. You ain't no good, you rascal. What you dog? Look out there. Yeah. Look out there, go. You wanna go to that? Yeah. Yeah. Nah, look out there. Yeah. As I said before, I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal. Boy, when you lay 6 feet deep, no more fried chicken will you eat. Oh, you know, I know that'll break your heart. Yeah. You ain't no good stuff. Yeah. Riley. You will call him that. Riley. I like your nose. You ain't no good, you rascal, you. Yeah, you know. Boy, you ain't worth a quarter. Boy, what is it that you got that makes my wife think you hot? Oh, you old dog, you. Yeah, you bought my wife a bottle of Coca-Cola so you could play on her big shoulder. You old dog, you ain't no good. I'll be glad when you did.
Where am I? Why, you are in Jazzmania, and you are the king.
Well, cut my comb. And who are you?
Why, I'm your royal student.
My royal student. Now, this is really good. Well, if you want to do something to please the king, have Louis Armstrong to play shy.
Why, it will be brought to you by this magic wand.
Well, go on and broaden it. What you waiting on then? Chocolate drop, that's me, 'cause my hair is curly, just because my teeth are burning. Oh, just because I always wear a smile. I like to dress up in the latest style, just because I'm glad I'm living. Oh, I take all my trouble, all with a smile. Just because my color shade makes difference. That's why they call me shy. I'll be glad when I'm dead, you rascal, you.
I'll be more glad of it.
And we're back. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Sepia Cinema. I'm your host, Roy Boyd, and in the studio this evening, we have a very special guest, Mr. Roger York, who is an acclaimed musicologist and film historian here in Richmond, Virginia. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Roger disclosed with me a little anecdote that I think he wants to share about jazz music.
Well, I think that these three films that we've seen actually point out a sort of an important transition as far as the public attitude about jazz. But I wanted to read a couple of quotes by some pretty famous black people, black men, about the general attitude about jazz, at least up into the 1920s. One of them is W.E.B. Du Bois.
Okay.
And this quote is, "Experience has shown that this sort of music is erotic. It has the effect on the performers and the audience. Persons who are concerned with social progress then must take steps to restrict jazz and stamp it out as an evil." And Carter Godwin Woodson, the founder of Black History Week, went even further in 1933 by basically saying that Hitler got it right, and that in essence, that it was important to round up jazz promoters and performers of both races and to execute them as criminals. So that's what people like Ellington and Armstrong had to deal with as far as public attitudes are concerned. Both of them realized that the only way they were going to get anywhere, become really popular, is to have powerful, influential white managers. And they both chose individuals that had a great effect on their careers, but in quite different ways. Ellington, early on, was not really all that impressive. He had a band called the Washingtonians that did a lot of society dances and so forth in Washington, D.C. And they were a decent jazz group, but certainly not as distinctive as Ellington later became. And in 1926, a well-known sort of mobster-connected jazz manager, impresario named Irving Mills discovered Ellington and liked what he saw and thought that Ellington had a lot of potential. And there's a lot of debate about to what extent Mills had an impact on Ellington. Mills is often shown as authorship credit on a lot of Ellington tunes, even though he definitely had nothing to do with it.
Amazing.
But that was the deal that Ellington had to make in order to be able to get the promotion that Mills was providing.
So when the jazz history books talk about 50% of publishing, that's what they're talking about. 50% of authorship.
Of everything. No. He would claim co-authorship of some of the music, but he got 50% of all the income.
Okay.
Now, of course, he had a lot of expenses because he spared no expense at all in promoting Ellington as a first-class performer.
I see.
And anyway, there's some that believe that he pushed Ellington into considering, for example, some of the early 20th century Impressionist classical composers like Ravel, Stravinsky, and Debussy. Right. And starting around 1927, what you get is, and there are two good examples in the earlier of the two Ellington films, Black Beauty and Black and Tan Fantasy, where you get these strange harmonies that are almost discordant, like you find in Impressionist classical music. And that's the sort of thing that really caused people to start paying attention to Ellington and realizing that he was somebody really special. And that the use of those harmonies is what really identifies Ellington music from that point on and makes him stand out from many of his competitors. Armstrong also chose important white managers, and didn't make choices that were so wise. His first, Armstrong really is two musicians. He's the jazz innovator of the 1920s, and then he's the sort of the pop personality of the 30s all the way through to the end of his life.
Right.
And his first manager was the manager who worked for the record company that produced his greatest sides for OK. And then he hooked up with a criminal thug who just pushed him in any direction that would make money. And then finally he ended up with Joe Glazer in 1935, who loved Armstrong, but still it was the same thing. If he could make a buck, he would just push Armstrong in any direction that would seem to make money. Whereas Mills treated Ellington as royalty almost, and he was given first-class treatment everywhere he went. Lots of publicity. The two films that we saw tonight clearly show someone being treated very reverentially, and that I think had a great impact on the way Ellington was enjoyed and appreciated. And Mills stayed with him until 1939, but in both cases, Mills and Glazer were getting 50% of all the money these two guys were bringing in. And Ellington finally got tired of it in 39, broke away from Mills, and then, of course, went on to what most people consider to be his greatest period, the 39 to 42 Blanton Webster
Yes,
band.
the Blanton Webster.
Yeah.
That's my favorite band as well.
And it's also, he was fortunate to have recorded for the record company that had the best sound. So
RCA?
RCA, yeah. The Victor records definitely sounded the best. So they're easy for people today to enjoy as a result.
Wow, wow, wow. A wealth of information. Please give us a call. I know you have questions. I know you have questions for this walking encyclopedia of music and film knowledge. Please, our phone number, of course, as you know, 915-5202, 915-5202, Sepia Cinema. Tonight is a very special night. It is our last night of the season, but we will be back in 2012. And we had three great jazz films. We had Symphony in Black, a Rhapsody in Black and Blue, starring Louis Armstrong, and Black and Tan, featuring Duke Ellington's notable work, Black and Tan Fantasy. And speaking of Irvin Mills, and that front title of Black and Tan, you know, it has on there Black and Tan, Duke Ellington, in arrangement, by Irvin Mills there. Yeah. We have a call. Hello, welcome to Sepia Cinema.
Hello.
Okay, maybe not.
Okay.
Right, well, sorry if we have missed you, try again. Yes, so we see how Mills's presence was even there with the film. Yeah. I heard that even with the Amos and Andy film later on, with Check and Double Check, Mills got that job for Ellington because he really believed that he could be bigger, that this was the way to really get him into the mainstream and into the big time. Roger, with these films, what was the situation regarding appearance that maybe Ellington or maybe some of the other band members had to deal with?
You mean physical appearance?
Physical appearance by the studio.
Well, a lot of it had to do with, I guess, how strong their managers or how strong the personalities were, because I have a lot of musical shorts from the mostly early 30s, and you see a wide spectrum of people treated the same way Ellington was, you know, dressed in their, I mean, some of these guys like Jimmy Lunsford were just, you know, visually absolute knockouts, just spectacular to watch. Right. And then others were, you know, silly hokum. So a lot of it must have had to do with just how influential how secure they were in their own image and how popular they were, and then how good their managers were. Because you see both extremes, but clearly I think the motivation behind it was probably commercial, because by making this music more respectable, then you were going to get conservative black people and white people to buy the records and listen to it. And I don't think there's any question that that was the motivation that was behind the sorts of things that we saw here with Ellington especially.
But were there any cosmetic situations?
Oh, well, yeah. On records, it was not unusual for there to be mixed groups performing because you couldn't see them. And some black soloists did perform with white bands in the 20s. But as far as integrating a group that played as equals, it really was the Goodman small group with Teddy Wilson and Lionel Hampton and Gene Krupa.
Okay.
But the irony in the Ellington situation is that he had a couple of players who were very light-skinned, and they were forced to wear blackface in these films because the producers didn't want anybody to think that it was a mixed group.
And this was Juan Tizol and
Juan Tizol, I can't remember. I don't know whether it might have been Barney Bigard.
Bigard,
yeah, because he was light-skinned as well.
Uh-huh.
So, it's unfortunate, and that's just, Ellington realized that that there were some things he had to give into, and he just had to pick his battles.
Talking about the image with the Ellington films and with Ellington himself that you were talking about earlier, it's interesting we're talking about the image of elegance because throughout Sepia Cinema, throughout this entire fall, we have been showing films that, well, there were some films that did not have African Americans in a positive light. Some characters, actors, there was controversy with Stepin Fetchit, of course. But for the most part, our films did show African Americans in a very, very positive light. And it's very interesting that we are concluding concluding the season tonight, featuring films from an icon of Black America in the earlier part of the 20th century who was a symbol of elegance. I want to read this quote by Ossie Davis about Duke Ellington. He said, Duke Ellington was elegance. Duke Ellington was the capacity to be in the middle of it and above it at the same time. He taught us the true meaning of style, the true meaning of grace, the true meaning of floating. Here we were, people described often as clumsy, stupid, shuffling, excuse me. Ellington walked on stage and all of those myths were dissipated. So it's just remarkable.
He had, as we were discussing when the films were playing,
right,
an enormous amount of personal charisma, and people just melted in his presence. It was just, he had such an overwhelming personality and physical presence that, even people who were not inclined to look upon him favorably were just taken by him completely. So there's, of course, it's hard to really be able to feel that by just watching the films.
Right,
unfortunately,
right,
but
sure.
The people who did know him say that was one of his great characteristics was his, especially women, just fell to their feet. I mean, they just were overwhelmed by him. One other thing I just wanted to quickly mention that is important about what the first film is, that it's an example of one of Ellington's extended works, and that's just the sort of thing that wasn't done in jazz before the war at all. He had done one previously extended work called Creole Rhapsody, which was about 10 and a half, 11 minutes. And then this piece, which is really kind of a hodgepodge of different elements of other songs.
Hello, caller, welcome.
Yes, sir, I got a question on Duke Ellington. We know he's by his music. I want to know, Duke Ellington was influenced, saw his music, I guess, through the Caribbean and some of his jazz influences?
Like maybe Caravan, like with the drums?
No, I'm thinking about more like Latin jazz, where on his latest albums or music that he released, it has some type of Caribbean flavor to it, a little bit of samba, and I'm not sure. I want to ask that to the professor.
I will, give that to Roger. Thank you.
Well, I'm not as familiar with his later stuff, but I do know from reading just about everything about him I've been able to get my hands on, that he was very adventuresome and would was always often trying to reinvent himself. He had a rough time in the 50s, especially, where he wasn't all that popular. Right. And so he would just find different themes as ways to sort of branch out in a different direction, try to gain a larger audience. I think that's probably the motivation behind that.
Could the phase of the sacred music in the 60s be a part of that too? From what I've read, that may have been motivated more by just a personal movement in that direction. Okay. He felt,
he felt that it was important that he leave things behind that are meaningful. And I think that was more of his motivation when he was going in that direction.
Excellent, excellent. We have about 5 more minutes here on Sepia Cinema, 915-5202, 915-5202, and we'll take a bit of a hiatus, and we won't see you again until later next year. Now, we're Ellington fans. Okay, obviously, we're spending an awful lot of time. Let's talk a little bit about Rhapsody in Black and Blue. We were talking about that because, well, it is a fun film. It is a little bit of a comedy. I kind of liked it, especially coming off of the heavy emotion, especially at the end of Black and Tan Fantasy. It's sort of nice to see that.
And the other films that you've shown too.
Yes, absolutely. But there was also this sort of situation where here was the husband, and he was portrayed as immature, not much of a husband. But yet his wife is towering over him and she's dominating him. And we kind of, well, frankly, I think we're seeing a bit of a perpetuation of the mammy stereotype here. And
that's, there are some exceptions to that. There's a great Ethel Waters film where it's just exactly the reverse. But at any rate, that's just the way it was. That's what they felt the audiences wanted to see. And, the idea of a strong black male was just something a lot of audiences just weren't quite ready to deal with.
But do you think that maybe Armstrong himself conveyed that in the Jazzmania?
Oh, no, I don't think I'd go. Okay. He was personally a fairly passive person.
Okay.
Although he was,
even though he spoke out against Little Rock?
He spoke out against a great deal. But I'm talking about as far as his musical career was concerned. Oh no, he was, that's another long story. But yeah, he...
Sepia Cinema caller, yes. Hello? Good evening. Okay. Okay.
But he basically just, spewed out whatever was handed to him as far as music was concerned. And sometimes, of course, after the war, he created a small jazz group with Jack Teagarden that was as good as anything he's ever done.
And there was a problem in New Orleans when they were trying to play there due to the fact that they were integrated. Are you familiar with that?
No, I
that there
don't
was some problem.
As late as the 40s?
Some of the...
No, I didn't know that.
All-star.
That really surprises me that would be the case. Those two were like this.
Yes,
they were...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Roger, I want to thank you for being here with us this evening and putting a remarkable ending to our first season here on Sepia Cinema. I also want to thank all of you for hanging in with us and being with us. And we've had a remarkable time during the past 8 weeks, and we want to definitely do it again. I hope that we have provided a service to you, and we would like to hear your feedback. Please, my Facebook address is listed, facebook.com/Ladivo. Want to recognize some people responsible here. I'd like to recognize our producer, Robert Lee Sims III, our director technician, David Aponte, our crew member, Laurent St. Giles. Special thanks to John Birch, Russell Wilson, Doc Brands, Jenna Shepard, Roger York, Jabari Robinson, Kwame Binti, and of course myself, your executive producer and host, Elroy Boyd III for Sepia Cinema. Take it easy. Take care.